That's me, sitting on the couch, watching some YouTube, specifically Lord of the Rings lore. And it made me want to watch Lord of the Rings. So I do have the extended editions for all three on Blu-ray, but to be honest, I didn't exactly know where they are. So instead, I went on my phone, looked up which streaming service had Lord of the Rings, and saw that HBO Max had it, and clicked on HBO Max, and I clicked on Fellowship of the Ring. Now, my excitement was at an all-time high, and then, boom! I'm hit with an ad. I look up to see how many there are, and it says one of two, and it has 30 seconds to go. And so I just shrug it off because at this point, I expect there always to be ads at the very beginning. But then the thought hits me, how many ads are going to be in this entire movie? Because this is a 3.5 hour long movie. Is it even worth watching on here? So I try to pause, but when you're in an ad, you can't see the bar for the movie yet. Editor Velvet speaks here from the future. You're going to notice a very large change in the editing style, and that is because it took me about 6.5 hours to do the first 30 seconds. Didn't even realize it was 30 seconds at that time. This is the first time I've ever edited a long form video, so we're going to switch it to a far easier method. If you liked that style of editing, though, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do it. It's just on a shorter video. Thank you. So after those two ads, I pause and holy nutmeg. Here is an actual photo of the movie bar. And yes, that is 11 ads in the movie. And keep in mind, each one of those has 3 ads inside of it as well, which range between 30 seconds to a minute and 30 seconds long. So you have to understand that it doesn't seem that bad, but if we take the maximum, which is 1 minute and 30 seconds, that's a total of 49 minutes and 30 seconds of ads in a 208-minute movie. That means that 23.8% of this movie will be ads. Now, of course, the counter argument is I could pay extra to get rid of those ads, as well as the fact that I literally have the physical movies, so I wouldn't have to deal with any advertisements. Now, I do also understand the necessity of advertising as a whole. I also understand that advertising is a $1.27 trillion industry that I am most definitely not going to make any difference to. But I truly feel like advertising as a whole has become very invasive and a frustrating experience. And I think that there are some good ways of advertising, and that there's obviously very, very negative ways of advertising. I personally would say that the advertising when the screen is paused is a very intuitive way because nothing's really happening, so you don't have to worry about it. And I also think that ad breaks in TV shows where there are natural breaks for ads is also a good way because the show was built with advertising in mind, so there's natural commercial breaks. The way that TV shows used to be made when cable was the norm is probably something that we're going to have to go back to because streaming, specifically when Netflix came onto the scene, really changed how shows were made. Because back then, you had to have commercial breaks, and typically they were also shorter, being, between about 40 and 50 minutes. Whereas most streaming shows are typically about an hour, sometimes even more. Now, Netflix first came out, really set the tone for that next age of media. And of course, when I say age, especially in the context of the internet, that means like little less than a decade, probably less. And when I say set the tone, I'm talking about that format. So long, uninterrupted episodes compared to before, with about 42 to 50-minute episodes, and they would have natural commercial breaks in the actual shows themselves because they had to have commercial breaks and they were built in. So I would say that we're just going to have to start going back to that format, even for streaming, because there's no way that it's going to become any better in the future. If anything, it is only going to get worse. Now, so far, I've really only talked about TV shows and commercial breaks and those, whereas the main point of this video is going to be focused on movies because they were specifically built without commercials ever being inside of them or being a part of that media genre as a whole. And I truly believe that media that wasn't specifically built with advertisements in mind should not have them. Now, before I go into the cons of commercials and advertising in movies on streaming sites, I do want to start off by talking about the pros to play devil's advocate, because I do actually believe that there is some good that can come out of them and that there are some positives. Not a lot, but I definitely do believe that there is some. The biggest pro that I could say for commercials in general, actually, would be that they are an interruption. And I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but commercials in general, commercial breaks or any kind of advertisement, any kind of break in any kind of TV show or movie, actually does have a positive, and they all have it, which is that it's a great time to get snacks, go to the bathroom, do anything you want to do, and you wouldn't miss any of the either movie or TV show because there's an advertisement playing. So I wouldn't really say it's specifically for media that's not designed for commercials. I would simply say that it just kind of covers all of that genre of watching either TV or movies, because everybody either can use a break or can do something with it. Even if you just sit there with nothing to do, you could do something. So I would definitely say that that is the biggest thing because you wouldn't be missing out on it. So the second pro that I would say is the potential of seeing an advertisement for a TV show or a movie that you would find interesting. Streaming services obviously promote their own new TV shows and movies, and those are the most likely ads that you'll see on a streaming service. So I would definitely say that that's a pro. It's definitely affected me. I've picked a movie or a TV show that I saw an ad for, and I ended up liking it, or I ended up not liking it. But it's sometimes it's kind of nice because you don't typically see advertisements for movies and TV shows long form anymore. They are typically 5 to 10 second advertisements, and you really have either no idea what's going on or it's very basic, so you obviously know what's going on, or it's a remake, which is 95% of everything that comes out nowadays. But that beside the point. The second pro is definitely exposure to other interesting, potentially interesting TVs or movies. So the third and final pro that I would say um, is seeing maybe a deal or an interesting product in a commercial or an ad. It's pretty rare, mostly because it's either advertisements for movies or TV shows, or it's an advertisement for some sort of medical product or a pill or things of that nature. It's pretty rare to see individual items advertised now, especially in like streaming. So I would definitely say that It's probably the weakest pro, but it is a pro nonetheless. Now, all of these pros have pretty solid counter arguments to them. Not even going into the actual cons, just counter arguments solely for the pros themselves that I've listed. Um, the first pro being the ability to go get snacks, to go to the bathroom, to go do whatever you need, and you wouldn't miss anything. Um, the pause button existing literally gets rid of that. The second one, the second pro was seeing interesting like movies or TV shows. Social media is a far greater way of seeing or being exposed to all kinds of different things now. Pretty much everything. Social media is again the same sort of counter argument for the third pro because deals and interesting products, basically any kind of commercial or advertising in general, is done better, more efficiently, and is far less intrusive through social media. Things like TikTok, things like even here on YouTube. But these movies were not made for that, so it's really just a hindrance. And yeah, you might see something and that might make you go and choose something, but the majority of people get exposed to all kinds of different stuff, and it's going to be way more on the social media side than them being exposed to all of this crazy stuff through advertisements or commercials in movies. So now that we've gotten the pros out of the way, we are now going to move into the cons. And the first big con is that these movies and TV shows were not made with commercial breaks in mind. This means that any kind of break in the show itself is not organic, and it's not what the director had in mind either. So it's not supposed to be there. And it's kind of funny when you think about it because in movie theaters, being on your phone, talking, or any kind of interruption is a bad thing because you're ruining the enjoyment for everyone else because you are being intrusive to the movie. But neither here nor there. The immersion is broken. When you go to a movie theater, they play all of the shows and advertisements before the movie because they are not going to break the middle of the movie to show you some advertisement for something that you don't really even care about. So the immersion and the ambiance is just broken. And whatever the show or the movie is trying to even create is just destroyed. You cannot have a an atmosphere of just anything basically. An example of the breaking of the ambiance and the immersion in real life, one of the actual reasons I even thought about making this video in the first place is that I have been watching Game of Thrones with my parents for the first time. I've seen it, I saw it a long time ago, and they've always kind of been iffy on it, and they finally wanted to watch the first couple of episodes and they were hooked. And obviously, Game of Thrones came out in 2011 and ended in 2019, which was 7 years ago at this point that I'm recording this video. And I was kind of worried about spoilers because they started really getting invested in the show. And it was to the point where we were binge watching whole seasons on the weekends together. And during high tense moments, or really just that amazing dialogue especially those first four seasons, or just intense scenes in general, they were just ruined because there would be every 10 to 20 minutes uh, our immersion was just destroyed by some advertisement for a medical cream or something like that, that had nothing to do with Game of Thrones. And obviously, Game of Thrones was never made with commercials in mind. So they're kind of placed in normal kind of breaks or transitions. So it's not like they're interrupting the dialogue itself, but it's definitely something that still breaks your immersion because most of the time it's not just like a cutaway or it's just a straight transition somewhere else. There's like a sound or somebody starts talking or you hear like a sword or there's some sort of way that you get transitioned to the next scene. And 9 times out of 10 when we would be watching and a advertisement or a commercial would pop up, we would hear the sound and then it would switch to the advertisement. And then, we would have to see a 3 ads just to get back to the show. And the thing that really got me was there was a ad while we were watching Game of Thrones, and we were in, I believe, the 4th season, and it showed Jon Snow on the back of a dragon in the north during that season, which is just a gargantuan spoiler because at that point you don't know that Daenerys is going to Westeros or made it to Westeros. The dragons aren't that big yet. And John is, he's eventually next season going to die. So it's just insane that they would put an ad with a spoiler. Now, again, I understand the show, the ending was 7 years ago. And, we all unfortunately had to experience the end of the show. Uh, but the fact that they would have an ad that early on, or an ad in Game of Thrones at all with a Game of Thrones spoiler in it is just crazy to me. Especially because House of the Dragon and I don't remember the name of the other show, but all of these shows are coming out, so people are going to be going back and watching Game of Thrones and like, my parents, we're it's going to be a first time watch. So, it's kind of just crazy to me that that would actually happen. um but getting sort of back to the point, I'm sure that the directors and the writers hate the fact that they have to deal with commercials in something that never had commercials to begin with because they build it up with the set, the music, and then it just gets cut in the middle instead of being able to just keep going. um and pretty consistently we would get about, it would be 3 to 4 ads, and each one of those are 3 each because it was on HBO. And those just really, really hurt the immersion. Just plainly. When something is super tense or something happens and you know you get taken out of the world because you got some guy coming on screen saying weird things about a saw. But I think it's just also very insulting to the actors, to the production, because they put so much time and effort into this. And not to say that regular TV and TV with commercials built in, they don't put in that effort, but the show is literally crafted so that those moments don't happen, so that if they have a tender scene, if they have a intense or really good dialogue, it's not going to be interrupted by an advertisement because they know where the advertisements are going to go. And that's really the issue, is that they have to, I would hope that somebody put those ads in there. It started getting really egregious too on like season finales. Every now and then there would be 5 commercials. And then on one season, on the first episode, there actually was no ads. It was awesome. It was phenomenal, you know? Um, it feels like, it's like you're ordering a burger from a restaurant and you take a bite and then the waiter stops you, right? And then he says, "Oh, you got to watch this presentation on the new ranch that we're selling before you can take another bite." And you're looking down at your burger like, "Whoa, man, it's hot. I want to take another bite because I paid for this and I want to take another bite, but you can't. You got to watch this presentation." And then you do finally watch his presentation, so you get to take another bite. And then he says, "Oh, no, no, no. We got to watch another presentation." Still, obviously, it's kind of a poopy analogy. But the point I'm trying to get is we are literally paying for the experience to watch these shows, and they are literally ruining it by having any kind of ambiance or any kind of storytelling just gets destroyed. My second con is going to be ad fatigue. When I was growing up, I would literally sit in front of the TV with a notebook and a pencil, watching Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, and would literally wait for the commercials because I was looking for cool toys to write down, and then I would make that my Christmas list for Santa. You know, and granted, 9 times out of 10, most of that stuff was just plastic garbage. Um, and the only toy that I recall actually getting strictly because I saw the commercial was moon shoes. And I remember it took like an hour to put those rubber bands on. There's so many rubber bands. And then I had to be carried outside because I couldn't walk. And I jumped in the grass, which was the first mistake because the grass is not, the ground is not even, and I did go up high, but I did not stick the landing, and I almost twisted my ankle coming down, and that was the I don't think that was the last time. Because while it did hurt, I do have a memory of jumping a couple of times in the driveway, but I have absolutely no memory of ever using those ever again. I still find those rubber bands even to this day, um, when I'm going through like old boxes. But that story aside, um, I say that story because I understand the importance of advertising and commercials because it also really does work. And there's obviously evidence that it truly does work. I mean, how many jingles do just everybody know? You know, when you see yellow and red next to each other, you think of McDonald's, When you see, just when you see a check mark, you think Nike. So obviously advertising does work. I mean, it's a $1.27 trillion industry, right? So obviously something is working. But there's also something that's just not working. And specifically, kind of going back to the Lord of the Rings movie, when I watched Lord of the Rings, because I ended up just watching the movie solely for this video. The thing with the advertisements is obviously, yes, there is a lot of them, but there's also very few of them. You get the same 3 to 4 advertisements just over and over and over and over. And specifically when we were watching Game of Thrones and we would watch, an entire season in one day, we would literally see the same ad probably upwards of, 100 to 200 times. And let me tell you, seeing an advertisement so many times really makes you hate that ad. It makes me not want to get it. It makes me just frustrated when I hear it. And I understand that there's obviously going to be repetition, but I don't really feel like having to watch the same ad, especially because sometimes it's like out of the 3 ads, the first one will be like an ad, the second one will be the same ad, and then the third one will be a slightly different ad. And then again, the first and the second will be the same, and then the third's different, or the second and the third are the same, and then one's different. So not only do you just constantly see it, it's normal, it just repeats. And it is so beyond, makes me not want to buy whatever that product is, or it really builds an amount of resentment for whatever brand or whatever item or whatever show that is, because wow, I really cannot stand just seeing the same ads over and over and over again. And I obviously understand why they just don't have a huge surplus. Um, but you would think that either they would make it so that you just saw less ads, or potentially spacing them out more. It is really weird when it's one after another, because you think the first one hasn't ended yet, and so you're like, "Oh man, are we still on that first one?" But I sort of digress. Ad fatigue is a real thing. When you just constantly are seeing the same things over and over. I mean, that's just true of basically everything. If you just are constantly seeing the same thing over and over, you're just going to either build resentment or just become sort of numb to whatever it is. Because I either I know what it is and I really don't like it anymore, or it's just something that I don't really care to engage with in the first place, and it's just kind of in the background. I would definitely say that another big part of that is that there are so many ads that just do a horrendous job of saying what the product is. There, 9 times out of 10, it's this weird commercial, and it's not like it's funny or engaging. I I don't even understand what they're selling most of the time, because it's this just strange thing that they have conjured up, and it makes no sense most of the time with what they're selling. So it's already, it's just, you're just getting ad fatigue, but even on top of that, I don't even know what the ads are selling either most of the time, unless it's just readily apparent. Oh, or most of the time, I don't even know what the TV shows or movies, what they're even about. Because most of these commercials are just not made with any thought to actually either show off what it does or to explain what it is. And that's why I truly believe that social media advertising, and specifically sponsors, works just incredibly well. And this, I mean, it's literally worked on me. I will be scrolling on TikTok, or I will be on well, I guess it's really just TikTok. Um but I'll just be scrolling, and most of the time, if I see something and it looks sort of ad like, I just instantly shoot my eyes down to the bottom left to see if it says ad, or if I see that orange shop sign, and most of the time I'll just swipe off. But every now and then, the person who's sponsoring it actually catches my attention and just shows me what it is, and just says what it is, and then demonstrates what it does. And it is so mind boggling how far away some ads are to their products. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And that short and simple and concise way of giving me that information. I mean, literally, I have actually bought several things off of TikTok because I've seen somebody using it, and so, I was just scrolling by. But that leads into kind of a sub point of this category, which is that when we're scrolling on TikTok, or we are on YouTube, or we are on Twitter or X, there is an expectation that we will see advertisements and commercials. there is an expectation that, well, you are either scrolling or you click on a video, there is going to either be like a sponsor or it's going to have ads. And going into whatever media format that is, specifically social media, you have that expectation that there is going to be ads. When you go and watch a movie, there is no expectation for ads. So not only are you just fatigued when it comes to seeing the same ads over and over and over, but on top of that fatigue, you are frustrated at the fact that it exists even in the first place. Because we see ads everywhere. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I can't even tell you what the last three ads I've seen are. And there's really only two or three commercials. The one with Jon Snow is the only reason I even remembered that one is because I was so worried that my parents were going to see that and it'd be a spoiler. Um, and the majority of the medicine is not that I remember it. I just remember that there was just lots of medical ads and like the promotions of like pills and stuff like that. But when you're scrolling, you have that expectation of you're going to see ads. And when you go and watch a movie, that expectation's not there. So you've already sort of like lost the plot. You already don't want to see them and then they're there. So so I'm definitely somebody who does not like just kind of spewing out the fact that I think this is frustrating or something like that without trying to think of a solution to the problem. And I would definitely think that there are many solutions to the problem. The first and the biggest one being they could just remove ads from movies. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That will literally never happen. Um, and their argument would simply just be that, you can just pay more and then you can not have to see the ads. Which, when you really put it into perspective, when apps started coming out, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this app is $1.99. That's so expensive. And it was a game or something like that, but it had absolutely no ads and all these extra features. And it was $1.99. And I was like, ain't no way I'm gonna pay for that. And now, we literally pay to have ads in the media itself. So I would say that the first way that we potentially could solve this sort of issue would be at the beginning of a movie or a TV show that wasn't meant to have ads in it. Maybe there could be an option to watch a huge amount of the ads that you would have seen in the movie all at the beginning before you start. So you can either choose to, hey, you know what, I'm just going to watch it with ads, or you can choose, I just want to watch them all at the beginning. That way you still get your ad money and I can watch an uninterrupted movie. The second way that I can really think of is having the first example that I gave for a different way would be more for like I mean, you could use it for movies and TV shows, but the second one would be more designed for TV shows specifically, where I would say that if you are like binge watching a TV show or you're, just watching something consecutively, that over time, so like you watch one episode and there was 3 ads in it. And then when you get to the next episode, if you watch it immediately after, you only have 2 ads in it. And then if you watch another episode, you only have 1 ad in it. And then on that next episode, you would have 1 ad in it. And it's sort of a way of making it not only better viewing experience, but it literally promotes for them to stay on your platform, to stay in your streaming service. And they, as long as they just stay watching, they can reduce the amount that they would have to see. And I obviously, I'm not a coder or anything like that. And there's obviously psychological reasons. There's all kinds of social programming. I'm sure that goes into all of that stuff. But that's just kind of two ways of sort of solving, um, or just more of just giving options to those of us who just don't want to have to deal with it, but don't want to fork out more money, and it still is beneficial to the company itself. Because at the end of the day, they want you on their platform and they want you watching things. So, and they get money through the ads. So, or you could, even for TV shows, you could have that where you watch all of the ads at the beginning and then you can just watch through the TV show. Um, those are just two ways. To close out this video, I want to say that I understand the necessity of ads. I also understand that they are not going anywhere, and this video was more of just kind of a rant, but just to sort of, I don't know, maybe some executive at HBO sees this video and implements something I said, or, sees the fact that there is a literal spoiler commercial in Game of Thrones. Do I think that's going to happen? No. um, and with all that being said, ads are, what keeps this platform going. If I ever get to the point where I'm able to monetize on this channel, you better believe I'm gonna be monetizing on this channel. But obviously, with that in mind, I also have an understanding that what I'm talking about here is media specifically with a story and with an atmosphere in mind. When you go to YouTube, there is an expectation of ads. That being said, I have been a YouTube premium member for a long time. So I haven't seen ads in a hot minute on this platform. Um, and that's just me, and with that being said, I'd like to thank you for making it this far in the video. Obviously, this is my first real sort of YouTube video. Uh, I'm just kind of doing this for fun. I just gonna be posting all kinds of stuff. If you liked this kind of content and you want to see more of it, let me know in the comments. Subscribe, leave a like. Um, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do on this channel. It's really just I've been thinking about maybe even uploading gameplay or game reviews. Um, Maybe game journalists. Talking about them. Um, but just let me know in the comments. If maybe if there's a topic or maybe even a game that you like to see a playthrough of. Let me know. And with that being said, bye, have a great time. You gotta keep your bongies in your boongies.